Welcome to the Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast, where we speak about all things related to spirituality, soul level healing, intuitive guidance, frequencies, and much more. I'm Amy Sikarskie, licensed vocational nurse, past life hypnotherapist, master intuitive energy healer, and a clairvoyant physical channel. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Spirit School Online, where we offer courses in energy therapy, free guided meditations, courses and information around learning to connect in with your spirit guides, and much more. You can find me at amysikarskie.com and offerings at spiritschoolonline.com. Welcome to the Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast. I'm Amy Sikarskie, and today we have a special guest, Laila Taylor. Laila Taylor is a Reiki master, Akashic reader, intuitive channel, and registered nurse. She calls herself a spiritual channel and allows higher, loving consciousness to flow through to spark the light within others and assist them with support and guidance on their own spiritual journey. It is her goal to not be anyone's muse, prophet, or leader, but allow others to walk with her as they embody their highest timelines. Laila believes her mission is to allow space to break through the illusion that fear, separation, and lack creates within our lives. In doing this, she opens the doors for others to embody their highest energy in their physical body. So, hi everybody, and welcome to today's special episode of the Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast. Today, I have a guest with us, or we have a guest with us, Laila Taylor. And Laila is just an amazing being of light here to serve humanity. And not only is she sharing her gifts, but she encourages others to share theirs as well and to activate, to open up to their soul potential. And she holds the space during multiple processes because when we are awakening and our spirit is coming online, I call it, the energy is activating, there can be many stages and experiences that we go through. So I'm really grateful and happy to have you on today, Laila. And how are you? How have things been going?
Oh, for one, am just so thankful and grateful for this moment to kind of come together and discuss this world of awakening and source and spirit and everything that kind of goes with it with our embodiment. I'm feeling great. 2022 has been off to a good start for me. And I'm just excited to share time with you and discuss these things about how we can really just embody ourselves even more, getting more comfortable with ourselves.
Right. Yes. And oh my goodness, to that, I feel that the past couple of years have been a doozy.
Yeah.
Just like one thing after the other. And I'm not sure about you, but in my life, when I felt like, oh, wow, that little wave just settled and I'm at a place of stability now. I mean, it could last like a day, maybe a
Yes.
week, and then another
Yes.
wave hits. And so I'm interested in your take on things or like your self practice. What are some of your favorite practices or mindset spaces, energy spaces that you find yourself in to help with these waves?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely like that. That's so funny because it's just this ebb and flow of you really feel like so embodied and great and wonderful. And then that can last as much as an hour and sometimes longer than that, a couple of days to a week. And then you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm right back down to ground zero. I'm struggling. I'm feeling everything. And so, what I have learned through the course of just like opening even more and surrendering even more to the healing process is I have to not only, I love meditating, I do meditate a lot. And that's a daily practice that I work with. And I work with crystals. I really like incorporating those. So I'll hold like right now it's rose quartz. I'm back to rose quartz. I haven't been with the rose quartz where it's like my main one for maybe a couple of months, but it called back to me. But it's finding ways to use my body within my practice. So when I first started, I was really just kind of like staying outwards and meditating. And then I would come back in and I would walk outside of my room and it'd be like chaos. And then I'd be ready to like, get angry and irritable again. And so I had these huge polarities kind of happening. And what I found to be really helpful and what I think a lot of people are looking for is how do I hold that frequency in my body? And so for me, movement and breath have been very important things to add in to my practice. So when I'm feeling stiff and my mind is going all over the place, it's like, okay, my body has a lot of energy. I need to move it. And that took a lot of deprogramming because I was really taught not to feel my body and be okay with my body. And so, yeah, really working with breath, clearing, and then also moving, even if it's just rocking or just holding myself during meditation, really embodying that higher frequency so I don't feel so separate from it. And it's like what my body was craving in the same way. Um, and so that's really what I have found to be so beneficial for myself personally is calling in that energy and letting it move through my body without stopping it and clenching onto it and getting stuck. Um, that and like I said, utilizing crystals, utilizing light and color and different smells and oils and stuff like that, like having just like a toolkit full of different things. But main thing being pulling that frequency in and holding it within me by moving my body and moving my breath.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that. And I'm so happy you shared because I feel that many of us can incorporate those elements into our day.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, when you're new to hearing about meditation, can be a bit overwhelmed. So I always like to remind others that, oh, just start with what feels comfortable. It's about being present, it's
Yeah.
about connecting with your body, exactly that. And although sometimes in meditation we feel expanded, like we float away or go somewhere, but other times I feel like I go deep within and I get
Mm.
a really, really nice ground. So, whatever space and experience one might have, it's the closing aspect when you come back into the body and you're presently reconnecting with this reality, grounding in, I call them the light codes, grounding in your
Yeah.
light, that energy. And it makes such a difference for the day. It just really will set the tone for the day. And as a mother, I'm sure you can feel that when you set your energy, the whole family, the whole house is influenced. And of course, they might not know what's going on, but all of a
Mhm.
sudden it runs a lot smoother. And wow, it's so beneficial all around. Um, so I do love that. And yes, crystals and oils. And for me, I like music. That really helps me. And knowing that, okay, we're doing the best we can,
Mhm.
energy is in flux. And as empaths, not only are we experiencing our human energy, our life, the ebb and flow of our own experience, but also we pick up on the collective so much. And I
Yes.
know you're on social media and you're just doing an amazing job getting your messages out there and being supportive for others. So I'm wondering when, because I have my own little way of it, but how about for you? What is it like for you? Do you have guidelines or have you found a need to manage the energies from social media? How has that impacted your life personally?
Yeah. So I have, mm, I think I'm very cautious on what I allow within my energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that came from a lot of it being working as a nurse. I realized when I would go in to, work that I was being very influenced by kind of like traumatic things all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I could either end up fully being in that energy and being upset and sad and unable to really hold my energy and my stance, hold my center. Or I could empathize, see it, send love to it, but not embody it. And so I hold that kind of same stance with social media. Um, with there's so many posts, especially with what's happening right now,
Yeah.
that feels like if I allowed myself to fully go into it, to be upset in the way in which I allowed it within my energy and for it to stay there, it would really knock me off my feet.
Mm.
And I used to feel as though it was incredibly important and irresponsible if we didn't allow that in, right? How loving is that for
Yeah.
me to not let it impact me in the most major way? But what I have been called to and what I receive guidance on is to, at this point when there's so much chaos, whether in the world or social media, when people are posting about spiritual bypassing or doing this or doing that, it's like, no, anchor your light even more.
Mm-hmm.
Pull into yourself even more. If you want to help others, if you want to help these situations, pull your light in even more, hold your frequency even greater, anchor it in, and then you're able to radiate out your frequency. And that's what's really going to create the change. And so I've I've not been one to share things unless I find that they're personal for me. Like I'm not a small talk kind of person in a way. I'm
Uh,
more like I like the deep stuff. And so if I don't feel as though I have a firsthand information or experience, I'm more just holding a frequency and sending it out and sending love rather than creating even more like separation and polarity, I feel like.
right.
So I
Yeah.
hope that's being clear on what I'm saying with social media. It's like I realize what it is. It's a tool to really like experience, and I find it a tool to be able to share a message, but holding those really tight boundaries since I had such poor boundaries for so long,
Right.
letting everyone and everything within my energy. And that just kind of broke me. And so I have to, even especially in the beginning of the healing journey, I was very still open energetically and I didn't understand what was happening. So, just creating more and more boundaries around my energy is what allows me to go into what can feel like chaos, go into what feels like just despair and devastation, regardless if that's a hospital room or chaos happening on the other side of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm able to hold my frequency while being empathetic and loving without me being on the field with them in the same mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love all of this that you're sharing. It's so important. And I feel like when sometimes people first hear about boundaries, it can be daunting or
Mm.
confusing. Like, what is that? And how do we implement boundaries? So, the first thing is, I would feel your accessibility, your availability to being in spaces that really would pull on your energy or heavily influence you in a mental or an emotional, even a physically taxing way. Um, and so by that, it was for myself, it was like, okay, I am only available for certain conversations when I actually feel that I can handle it. And
Mm.
rather than sacrificing my self worth, even because that's what I felt like it went back to like, well, how worthy am I to feel safe in a conversation or feel healthy enough or prepared for this? Because some conversations,
Yeah.
are just not going to be the most compatible or even respectful. And so for myself, it was like, okay, I am available for a certain amount of time or not today at all when people might phone me or try and, text and all of that. And so even just putting my phone on do not disturb, for me, that's setting a strong boundary.
Mm.
And then to that, the actions that we take. So if I had if there was a conversation or a website or a social post or I don't know, like a show or something that I know really consistently upset me and would put me in a funk, like why keep
Yeah.
going back to it? So the same with social media. It's like I go on and I share, like you're saying, kind of what I'm feeling in that day, or if I get guidance that it would be something to benefit the collective. And very rarely do I actually go on and scroll through. So when I do see messages and I'm scrolling through, it's very important to me. I absolutely like have to really resonate with the vibration of that page, um, or it's not supportive. It's not really worth my time.
Hmm.
And so that's another form of self care and boundaries. And so I like that we're talking about this because of all of the energy right now happening. And so many of us can feel it without having to go on a chat, a
Yeah.
comment thread, or even read about whatever. We can feel it. And so, what is that all about? Like you were saying, well, you can sense it. So, what is our response? And that is to hold the space of light, to embody
Yeah.
more light, to be peaceful, and to let it emanate from us and let it shine out. And I feel like that's why so many of us are here, and it's being made more known
Yeah.
recently over and over of like why. And, for years, I saw on your bio that you had experiences back in 2012, I believe it was.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that was a really big time. And in my life too, like 2011 to 2012 was a whole shift in energy. And I remember myself even questioning, like, oh, why am I here?
Hmm.
And once I started working with others in readings and healing sessions, I would get that question a lot. And now, a decade later, I'm like, oh, now we know.
Yes.
We were preparing. And
Hmm.
had we not prepared by understanding energy and dynamics, understanding what I call autonomy and sovereignty, so having those
Hmm.
boundaries, what energy is mine, what is yours, how can I best support you while also taking care of myself, um, it would be a really, I just feel like it would be very challenging right now. It would totally drain me and knock me on
Yeah.
my butt if I didn't have that
Yes.
self-care and already have built up to it. So, um,
Hmm.
but since I did bring up the aspect of 2012, how was that for you? What was your shift and, if you want to call it like awakening or transition, what was that time
Yeah.
like for you?
So I would have to really preface it with just, how I grew up, grew up in a household that had just with a single parent with a dad who had substance problems and just wasn't around for us, wasn't able to be there. And so depending on your personality and your past, your mission that you came in for, my personality was to, I really took it very personally, and I let it just really start breaking me down, of why am I not good enough? Why can't he be here for me? And so I began really just feeling like me and myself wasn't good enough. Am I in like, just my natural worth? And then just throughout my life, it was felt as though, you know, was taught really not to trust in your own sense of awareness, growing up in a Christian household.
Mm,
Um, and, my parents doing the best that they could. You're going to have to make a decision on what you're going to believe and what you're not going to believe. It was kind of met with this like roadblock. Hold up, you're going too far. You're asking questions you shouldn't be asking. Um, and so it really just, facilitated this feeling of not, can't ask questions. You can't trust yourself fully.
mm,
These are the rules, and this is how you play the game. And I just wasn't somebody who felt like I could easily fit in with that. Um, and, I sensed energy very young. I always felt and knew somebody was in my room and could see people walking, but they just looked like shadows. And when I had spoken to my mom about it, it was, well, we never walk the earth again. So if you're seeing something, it might be, the devil trying to trick you, the devil tricks us. And so this huge paranoia kind of started from that point of, well, why is he here every night? What am I doing? Why is
Yeah.
he trying to scare me? And it wasn't said, she didn't mean it in that way, but for me, in my mindset, because my experience was so different than hers, um, it was fear-based. I became very afraid of what I was doing wrong. And so just throughout my life, throughout middle school, high school, I just like started like becoming more and more dissociated with my body and who I
Mm.
was. I couldn't tell you what I liked. I didn't really feel like I had a favorite anything, just felt very like I'm following the rules. And that went to, I graduated in 2005, and I had gotten pregnant while I was in high school. And I would say this was really the start of me starting to, what I would say, like start breaking down,
Mm-hmm.
the facade is starting to break apart. I was the one who was supposed to be the one that made it. I was the smart one. I was the one who didn't. Not that my brothers weren't smart. If they watch this, they know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Reading, I was like, I put your nose down, do your homework, and I didn't fight against anything. Right? I was too afraid, and I felt like I lived two different lives because I was so desperate for validation and attention and love, and I didn't know how to find it. And so I really just allowed myself to kind of like blur the lines and give myself away in a way, um, where I didn't feel like I would do things to allow other people to have access to my body, and I dissociated from it,
Mm-hmm.
meaning it would happen and I wouldn't really be there, right? Like I was
Right.
just wanting to feel love. And that led to me getting pregnant while I was in high school, and then eventually ending up not keeping that pregnancy. That was a very traumatic experience because I was 17 at that time. And um, just the whole experience in itself was incredibly traumatic, and it was kept secret. Nobody knew about it. And I think that's when I started to, it's the walls and the foundations were shaking.
Uh-huh.
And then I immediately got pregnant with my son, my oldest son, just a couple months later. And
Okay.
here we are. So he was born 2006. After that, I struggled with intense depression, intense panic attacks that would last hours and hours, where I was in intense paranoia. I always felt like I heard somebody or somebody's here, somebody's trying to get me, like very like scared.
Mm.
And I felt like I was just living in pure misery and hell. I felt like I had to save everyone else from me because I didn't know who I was. I felt like I was like a leaky ball that just everything came out. Like I had nothing in me. It was all separated, and I could
Mm.
be incredibly, I could be good for a second and then really bad the next second. And so, of course, when I went to a therapist and they asked questions of, do you have mood shifts? And do you feel like everyone's always watching you? And do you feel this? I'm like, yeah, all this. And so they had diagnosed me with bipolar depression, and they put me on medications. Every medication I went on, I had severe reactions to, like viral meningitis, Stephen John. Like I was having all these crazy kind of medical reactions, and I couldn't really stay on any medicine. And I think the doctors were kind of like annoyed with me because there's nothing they can do. They're like, oh, one doctor's like, I can't help you anymore. And I was like, okay. And so it came where I just stopped taking the medication, and I kind of spiraled for about 2 months. And then I was just crying one day, kind of having a fit as normal. I was losing myself in my emotions, and I was just crying on the bed, and I felt a hand holding my hands, and I was like, oh, I thought my husband had came in to soothe me, which at this point he's kind of checked out a little bit, he's protecting himself.
Mhm.
And I open my eyes and I see my grandmother standing there, and she passed when I was maybe 8 or 9, and she was beautiful. She was just glowing, but not the kind of glow where you can't look at, but just glowing and holding my
Mm-hmm.
hand. And we just looked at each other for quite some time. And I remember her saying telepathically, she's in my head, everything's going to be okay now. Everything's going to be okay. And so I just crawled out to my husband. It was late at night. And I said, everything's going to be okay now. And I walked back. And when I tell you everything was better, my mood swings, my panic attacks that would last hours just stopped. I didn't have those highs and lows. It really just was like this shift. It's like the 6 years, 2006, 2012. This shift happened and I graduated nursing school. What's funny is people wouldn't see this on the outside. I was actually
Mm-hmm.
I was in nursing school at the moment, very good. I was still giving to everybody. I was still able to make money, still able to be in society. And you would have never thought that anything was happening. Um, but inside, I was just like crumbling. So that happened in 2012, and I graduated early 2013. And for that period of time till 2018, I just kind of started healing, not unconsciously. Like I wasn't like, oh, I'm healing, because I didn't really understand that concept.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 2012 was a huge shift in everything. It's like I got a new chance at a different timeline. It was either that, or I was at the point where I didn't know how I was going to keep being on the earth,
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like I was my own tormentor and I didn't know how to stop myself. And it was terrifying waking up every day of, I don't know who I'm going to be today. And I feel like I have no control. And to feel that lost within yourself, you can give me all the help you want. You can tell me all the things you want to tell me,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm doing it to myself and I don't know how to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I didn't want to die, but I knew I couldn't do this anymore. And so I didn't know how to stop it, but I was ready to. Before that happened, I was ready to go. And I feel like this major intervention came in. This just, okay, we got to come down. We got to show her, we got to do something, because
Yeah.
she's got something that she's here to do. And she's just really struggling. And that was just the most beautiful gift that I could have received at that moment. And I took it as a real blessing. And it really did change the trajectory of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is. Wow. So beautiful. And my mind is like, I'm just in awe. And then of course I have so many questions
Yeah.
that I'm just like, where do we even start? That's a very powerful story. And I really appreciate you sharing with us because it's deeply personal.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like we have to be so strong. We can't
Mm-hmm.
be vulnerable or share these parts of ourselves for whatever reason it might be. Like for myself, it's always been that I'm protecting my family,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is sharing like insecurities or emotional experiences from my childhood. Um, I feel like, okay, whoever was around in my life then, I want to protect them, or whoever's in my
Mm-hmm.
life now, I want to protect them. So I don't really speak about a lot. And then on the other aspect of it, it's like the work that I do, that thing came up as well. Like, well, I don't really want to say so much because we lived in the Bible Belt, and I think this was a good thing. Like, I didn't want my children to be
Mm-hmm.
ostracized, in the community. So now I feel that it's so important. And so I'm sharing a little bit more and more, even with, the podcast. And I really appreciate you sharing because I feel like there is somebody, I'm sure more than one person,
Mm-hmm.
that really can relate. And if they're going through an experience in this moment, will find hope from
Mm-hmm.
knowing they're not alone. And the aspect that you mentioned about healing and you really weren't aware that it was happening, that's so important to share as well, because in our community, in our field here, we have a lot of modalities we can speak to, a lot of tools and techniques we can speak to. But I feel like the one guiding light is that your spirit and soul will lead you. Your guides can help support, like your grandmother came in, and there is always an opportunity for divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have to maybe like be at that brink of no
Yeah.
return, like you're saying, that timeline shift and split. um it really has to build up to that. But other times I feel like, okay, and I know for a fact that the more we are open to Spirit's help and we recognize it and we're grateful for it, the more it just keeps showing up.
Yes.
So yes, and so whatever path, whatever techniques, modalities, support, moments of awareness come through, it's individualized. And I would encourage everybody, if they're feeling like it's a really challenging time, just to know like we're all feeling it.
Yes.
And stay here, stay with us, we need you, and we're
Hmm.
flowing forward. Because just like you shared, and I've had this as well, a really emotional, challenging childhood and teenage years. And my kind of turning point, things that really clicked for me also, was when I was 17. So I thought, oh, that was super interesting.
Hmm.
Um, but what I want to share with that is, look where we are now. And so I
Hmm.
would encourage anybody that's feeling that, like, okay, it's going to get better.
Yeah.
And my life has had so many gifts brought in to me, which are magical experiences and moments, things I would have never imagined or dreamt about. And it was just because I decided to stay, to stick around, and find my purpose, which is, let it's been made aware to me by every step that I take. And so my husband he's a big planner, and every New Year's Day, he's like, "What are your, plans for the year? What are your goals and aspirations?" And he doesn't really ask me anymore, because a couple of years ago, I got a little feisty. I was like, "Look, I don't work that way."
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
my my goal is to stay in alignment, let Spirit lead the
Mhm.
way, and answer the call. And I don't really know
Yes.
what it's going to look like a year out, but I can tell you the vibrational frequency that I'm going to maintain and
Mm.
be in. And so just in my personal, path, that has let me not get overwhelmed, but take everything a day, a week, a month at a time. And
Mm.
even when I have my own projects I want to work on, sometimes it's like, okay, Amy, you're putting too much on your plate. So I definitely can see where, in the spiritual side of things, like, I just stay the course and don't overanalyze, and I'm not a big planner for like the whole year.
Mhm.
Um, but going back to all of that, I really, really appreciate you sharing with us, because I feel that so many of us have moments where we question our purpose. We question, why am I even here? And how to integrate into the physical reality. And especially when there's so much, I do want to call it like programming and disinformation, because there are so many narratives out there of what humanity should look like, how we should feel. We have our community, we have society, we have, like social media, mainstream media, we have religion, we have our schooling, our parents. Like, there are so many opinions, projections trying to mold and shape us. So it can be exceptionally confusing, especially when we're like, I know they only mean the best. Like, this is coming from their heart. They're trying to
Yeah.
share what they really feel makes a good world, a good society, a good human. But to that, yes, there are laurels and standards and ethics and morals, but what works for one might not work for another. And like you mentioned, the aspect of some of your parents' beliefs and the church and your experience there, and I can relate too, because I was in a strong religious community that I ended up leaving, and that's when I finally felt like I could find my true self, and the thoughts and awareness of how souls, spirit, soul, afterlife, connecting in with guides and all of that. It kind of intertwined with my religious upbringing, but there were definitely red flags that my community, my church, would not have approved
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Like,
Yes.
oh.
Mhm.
So, and I can see where guidelines are meant to assist and provide a structure to help keep us safe and supported. But when we expand beyond that box, then what? So
Yeah.
then we go on our merry way. And I think, well, at least for myself, I just let Spirit lead the way.
Mhm.
in whatever that means for each of us, because our connection to source light, to our soul, our guides, it can be different. It is different for everybody, but also can fluctuate. There were periods in my life where it was more ascended masters working with me, and then archangels, or just my guides, or
Mhm.
like my soul light. So, so here you are, like you've had this major shift in healing, and when did you decide, or what did it look like for you when you felt like, okay, I've got this. It's making sense, or I've got a grasp on things, and I'm feeling more grounded, clear, centered, and full in my light. At the point that you got the call to then start offering services and work with others.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So, like I said, 2012 to 2018, I was really just working on my family and nursing career. And then 2018, I had a dental procedure in which they were numbing my mouth, and I felt the needle go up and like hit like my nose somehow through my mouth. And I felt this like just like a tuning fork would go like buzzing all throughout my head. And I started having these like waves, and
Oh.
being the person to not cause any conflict or be a burden. I didn't say anything to the dentist. I was just there like, oh, something happened. And then the numbness never went away. And I went like, I had to go to a neurologist, get MRIs, get all these scans, try to figure out. And they're like, yeah, none of this makes sense, because what I started to have happen was I started seeing things and I started feeling things. Um, in which if I would see this orange energy coming towards me, I would have like pressure right here, and then it would start radiating. And so I was like, I thought that something had happened or there's something wrong. I have a mass or something like that. And I really couldn't figure anything out. So that dental procedure, I had to look back and be like, oh my gosh, yeah, that was in 2018. It opened everything up. And so then for about 2018 to 2020, I was like finding any podcasts I could to listen to, because I was like, okay, like I am seeing these things floating around me at all times. And I
Mm-hmm.
notice when I look at them, they come closer.
Mm-hmm.
And when I call them closer, I can feel them on different parts of my body. I can feel like a hand here, and then I can feel it move up and down. And I started associating the colors with different feelings on my body. Um, and so, yeah, I was just like soaking up information. I was, like I said, podcasts, books. Like the only thing spiritual on TV I felt like was the Long Island Medium.
Yeah.
And so, like, that to me was like spirituality. Oh, like that's, and that is really cool. I love mediumship. But I was like, oh, that's what we do. When you start feeling things, you're a medium. So I had started listening to a podcast called the Psychic Teachers, I think it is.
Okay.
Um, and I really enjoyed them because they gave real simple information, but it was spiritual. They made it for a beginner to be able to understand, very down to earth. And I had done a reading with her where I sent in one question email, and I got back that I was supposed to do something, an intuitive class next year. Like my guides are pushing me. And so 2020, February 2020, I did my first intuitive class. It was 3 weeks, 1 hour each week online.
Okay.
It was so wild because here I am, a person who is such a perfectionist. I won't try something unless I know I can do it wonderfully, just so I can protect myself, right? I
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
feel safe and know that I'm okay. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm really going out on this limb here. And I was getting it all right. It was very scary yet exhilarating. I was like, oh my goodness, this is wild. And so I did that class. And I remember in the last one, I was like, oh, let me just see if it was supposed to be, I was reading her energy and I had all this stuff wrote down. And then I was like, is there anyone around with, this person who's passed on? And then I just wrote pages of information about these people's past loved ones who started walking in and talking to me. And I would just like, oh, okay, this is grandma, this is what her house looks like, this is her meatballs, this is where she lives, you go over the bridge. And so that really kind of sparked what I did. And then I say 2020, I found a mediumship sitting circle online.
Okay.
Didn't take a class in mediumship. I'm like, I'm just going to go sit in the circle and see what happens. And that was really cool. I really enjoyed doing mediumship. I found that it came very naturally. And so I started like when I'd be at work, which isn't, I would never do now, but I would be at work. That's where those boundaries come in.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, somebody's grandpa's here. You're like, people's grandparents would be there every day with me. If I was working with this certain person, they would be coming in. So I started just doing readings for free on this Facebook forum, and then like with coworkers and stuff like that. I didn't start actually offering any kind of sessions until 2021. And that's after when I had my Reiki attunement with you. I finally, I was went all the way through with Reiki Master, and that felt more comfortable for me at first because it was something hands and physical, so I could like actually almost in my way legitimize myself to other people.
Yeah.
Look, you can feel it,
Right.
how can you trust me when I'm reading this other stuff that you don't have physical proof of? So at first Reiki was like this introduction into me being able to trust my own intuitive side. And what it really was is when I was doing Reiki, I was just giving like intuitive information most of the time. I was having their loved ones visit. I was, saying what they struggled with, what I'm seeing as what's coming up for them. And so, that kind of started it. And I'd say I started 2021, I think maybe in like February. So about a year ago, I started offering Reiki. And it just started expanding from there with Akashic readings and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's really taken off, and because you
Mhm.
offer a lot more than just, not that
Yeah.
Reiki is just because it's amazing, but
Yeah.
you have really blossomed, and I'm just so proud and so happy, like to see how far you've come, and that, it's like, okay, we have these gifts, we have this ability, but it's that inner gumption to just take that
Yeah.
step forward and do it,
That's the
try,
hard part.
offer. Yeah, expand. Like
Yeah.
that's the hardest part is to do it. And I feel like, well, why? So breaking down programming,
Mhm.
trusting ourselves, being vulnerable. Like you're very
Mm.
vulnerable because I know when I started to first, do readings and also the energy work, I would question too, oh, is the person I'm working with going to have a good experience?
Mhm.
Always wanting, like you were sharing, like we're always like, how will they experience it? And being there
Mhm.
for others. Um, so I would put a lot of kind of pressure on myself. And really, as you know, as everybody I'm sure knows, when you're working with energy, you have
Yes.
to relax, be open and let go. Like there's
Mhm.
no control. You, as a channel, you are sharing what's happening. Energy worker, you're holding space, letting the energy channel through, facilitating. And I've always found as the receiver that energy healing sessions that also provide readings, like the information that you were sharing, so beneficial. It
Mhm.
really helps us to find peace mentally and then in the spirit form, like the energy of spirit and whatever's held in our chakras, we can finally let go, like that kind of
Yes.
thing, or whatever's in an organ. And um, so that I love that you shared that you offer a blend of that as well. So, so then you got into Akashic record readings. So I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. So I am very much a researcher. Like I like all kind of information. And I have to be very careful about that because I can be a person who just researches and learns and learns and learns. It's like, okay, now you got to apply it. Now
Uh,
you got to embody it, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
that was like the way I was protecting myself was like, oh, I'll just learn about being a medical intuitive. Like I was jumping all over the place studying because that's what felt good to me to have knowledge.
Hmm.
But the actual application of it is what created me to be a little nervous. And so I had came across Akashic records at some point during this time period in 2020. And it was Dr. Linda Howe's book of like how to read the Akashic records. I
Yeah.
bought the book and only read, I would say, first 20 pages or so. I
Okay.
stopped before I got to the prayer. And I had this feeling, and she stated in the book, you're either going to be ready for this or not right now. And I did, I for the first time didn't finish a book. I closed it and I put it away. I was like,
Ooh.
I'm not supposed to read this. I didn't feel right about it. I felt like, oh no, put it away. And so I just continued with, right at that point, still the mediumship. And I went to my first Reiki session. I was being called to go get a Reiki session. And I found somebody in Noblesville, Amanda Thomas, who's amazing, Reiki master. And my first Reiki experience was, oh my gosh, amazing.
Oh,
It was so cool. And that's what I think is so neat, is for people who are intuitives or sensitives or empathic, or feel like they have a lot of anxiety, depression, and they haven't tapped into that side of themselves yet, to know that, hey, you probably have some gifts happening that you're
yeah.
suppressing and not aware of, and are getting distorted because you haven't seen the light of it. Um, the Reiki it just clears and opens that channel
Yeah.
for you, and the visions in the hands. I felt, all the hands, healing hands inside, and they were moving and talking to me. I'm like, what is happening? I had this eye pillow on, and I was having this visceral experience. And afterwards, she said, my guides kept saying the entire time, she can do what you can do. She can do what you can do. And showed me doing Reiki. And she goes, but also they said, I have to look into the Akashic records. And she said, they're saying that you're naturally just connected to it. I was like, oh my gosh, so wild. Okay, I'm going to go home and open that book.
Yeah.
This was maybe August of 2020. My first time opening the records, I just read the prayer, this was still the same day I did Reiki, my first experience. And I just had this, immersive experience. I've had a couple of those before, where it's like you're in like a 4K, 5K movie, and you're being
Yes.
pulled through the experience, like you're not
Yes.
even having to create it.
Yes.
That's what happened. And it was, I had information all wrote down. I went to this library, and this big guy stood up, and I saw all these people walking around this beautiful wooden library, and there was long tables and benches, and people were pulling books down and reading them. And I was just like, literally just watching. I wasn't controlling it, which was different for me. And he said, what do you want to know? I said, I want to know where I came from. And the library doors, the ceiling opened up, and I immediately just portaled out. And then this voice came in, and he was so excited, and oh my goodness, this is so exciting. My name is this. He said like Set Tut or something.
Okay.
I wrote it down. There's actually like this Egyptian, I don't know. So I wrote down his name.
Okay.
And they took me to this place, and it had the pyramids that looked like the Giza pyramids, but it was all like metalish. And he had said who he was, and that he assists me in this lifetime for, this and this reason. But what was interesting is they showed me multiple different energies, light being energies. They showed me different ET energies, and they would rotate, and another expression of energy would form, and they would rotate, and another expression of energy would form. They said, you're all things. Yes. You are all this and more. And they said, we're excited to talk to you. You need to go. We're going to go back, and we're going to continue to work with you. And so I wrote it all down. And when I looked up stuff, I realized that the pyramids of Giza, I think, are aligned to the Orion constellation, which I did not know, which I thought was really cool because of where I went. And so I was like, oh, okay, like this is super neat. This must be, and it's connected to the Egyptians. And this guy was an Egyptian person, or it's like Set Hut. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. So that experience was so intense that I just started opening the records every day for myself. I would say the prayer, and I would just channel all this info. Now, the kind of person I am is when I get like cool stuff, like I'm like, oh, I want to share it with everybody. So I was like, I'm terrified, but I want to share because this is so cool to me. I feel like everyone would be as excited, and people were not as excited as I was at all. People, they're like, okay, but then they don't understand it all at the same time, So I found that my excitement for it would meet a few people who are really like on that vibration of I'm interested in that kind of stuff. And then other people, when I would talk to them about extraterrestrial or something like that, they would like look at me like, you already know Laila is little this, little that.
Oh, girl.
So it was like this big jump. and I'm talking about extraterrestrials and light beings and stuff like that. But that's really what started me on working within the records. And I just enjoyed being in the frequency of it. Now, during this time in 2020, I started having this group come through called the One of Many. Um, and I didn't necessarily know who they were. They first spoke to me in poems and poetry. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I would just go into meditation and I just noticed these thoughts would come through where it sounded like somebody speaking to me. And they would speak in poems, and their poems were parables. You'd have to read it to be like, what are they talking about? A lion and a this and the very interesting way of speaking, very beautiful at first. And I have since realized that within every frequency I open, whether it be Reiki, whether it be I'm working in the Akashic, or I'm using my intuition, there are a frequency that's threaded through me that I'm pulling in at different times. And so I started noticing, like, I can go into the Akashic records and my frequency of what I'll get will be a little different than if I'm doing a Reiki session, but it's still intertwined with their energy. And so it just really allowed me to experience them in multiple different ways through different modalities. And so through Akashic readings, I really just got a more closer connection to my own channeling, which I started realizing that most people, when they're doing intuitive stuff, whether it's meditation or Reiki or psychic reading, they're channeling some sort of information through. And so I think I was meant to go through Reiki and, Akashic readings and everything to say through everything, you're still pulling through source energy and source light, higher vibrational love.
Yes. Yes.
And you can put it into a pathway to make yourself more comfortable and give it surroundings and borders, because I can say, oh, this is Reiki.
Right.
But really, you're just pulling through higher energies. And so, so that's how I started with the Akashic reading. And then there's a Akashic reader, Ashley Wood. She has the podcast Align Within.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of her, but
I think I have.
yeah, she has this course. And I had asked my guides, do I need to take this? And they really said, no, you don't. You're in the Akashic records, but if you want to, you can, because I wanted more boundaries and rules.
Yes. To feel like we've got this, like we're safe and we know what we're doing.
Exactly.
Just a little validation, please.
Validation. I need a little structure. And after I got through it, I was like, oh, I got good information. But for the first time, I realized, oh, I didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
I trust in myself that I'm receiving this information. But so I got finished the course with her and had the official Akashic reader title behind me. But yeah, that's how I just started with Akashic readings.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and it's interesting because I remember I took back from like 2011 to 2013, 14. I went back into taking a lot of classes around spirituality and the healing arts and doing readings. And I took a class and my husband was like, "Did you get anything out of it? Like, did you learn anything?" I'm like, "Oh, I picked up one thing, one new thing for this like $400 class." But it was but it was also this like experience of, "Oh, but now I'm confident because clearly I already like just what you're saying, what you got from it was that and you're doing it great. It's that confirmation. And also it's so nice to be able to be in a class with somebody or other students and be able to speak freely, like so they're not looking at you funny when you're talking about the extraterrestrials.
Random stuff. But in the connections you receive from just taking the class, like you stated, it's not really even any of the courses. Like I could take Reiki. I could have gotten certified through Reiki by anybody, right? In person, I could have. It's not exactly the course. It's the experience of who you're working with and then what avenues that can open up for you. And that's where, like, I remember I heard you on a podcast and I can't find that podcast for the life of me, Amy. I have searched now for this podcast where you were talking about channeling and that you were a nurse as well. And so I really like understood that. And I felt like, I can kind of like, I understand a little bit of her energy. I can kind of resonate with it. And that's how I found you. And I went and saw that you offered Reiki. And I was like, oh, I'm supposed to go with her. I'm supposed to like be with her. I like her energy, feels like really, really good. And following that, just like calling of, I could have gone with somebody else 2, 3 months ago, but it just didn't feel
Mhm.
right. And so these classes are really just like openings to new connections that are going to serve you maybe 10, 5, 20 years down the road. And you have no idea.
Oh, exactly. Like you literally have no idea. I look back at the classes that I took with the instructors, and then also
Mhm,
my classmates, some of like really good friends,
mhm.
still to this day. And I even reconnected with my Reiki master teacher a few months
Oh,
ago. We hadn't really connected for a couple of years, and come to find out, she saw that I was releasing the Ultimate Guide to Channeling book, and she was also releasing a book, a couple of weeks prior. And we were like,
wow.
whoa, hello. And it was just so fun because I'm like, oh my gosh, hi, friend. I haven't
Yeah,
connected with you for years, but you just pick right back up. So,
yeah,
yeah, it can be a lifelong friendship for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. Wow.
Amazing.
hmm Well, that makes me so happy. And so, when we were speaking a couple of weeks ago, one of the main um, things or aspects that really drew me to want to have you on the podcast was that you are channeling now a collective of beings. And
Yeah.
so, it's the one of all or the one of many.
One of many. Yeah.
Okay, it's the one of many. And so I'm interested in a little bit because I channel too. So I always
Hmm.
find, oh, I can speak with somebody else who channels.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yes. So I'm kind of interested if you could share with us a little bit about your experience, um, how you would describe your channeling, the mechanics of it, like how deep
Hmm.
do you feel you get,
Yeah.
and how are
Yeah.
things flowing with, because it's fairly new. I mean, only
Yeah.
a couple of years. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's so wild. You're right. I had to remember that, like, gosh, really just 2 years of me like practicing stuff, you think
Mhm.
like you're taking so long. And I'm like, oh, it's only been 2 years. So come on now. Um, so with when I channel, it was really just a process of, like I said, I feel like the Reiki was like a gateway, almost like a gateway drug would be, like, to higher and more impactful ways to channel energy.
Mhm.
And so I realized, like I said, that they were always kind of there, and that they were the energies that were coming through, that were speaking to me in like song and poem.
Mm.
And then I would just be first just channeling, either with writing it out or typing it out. And
Okay.
so that's how it first started. I would just write Word documents. And it was mostly, it was towards me, but it was towards just the energy of the earth in a way. The programs, they're very much they're this collective of incredibly loving light beings, this high frequency. And they would come in and they would say, we're the one of many. And I would see them as three blue lights, and they would merge together as one and then like separate out. And so I would see them in my waking hours just around me. And how they explained it is that they are just a collective. And I feel as though they have stated that I have a vibration within that as well. Obviously, I'm working with them, but that there's aspects in me as well that's within that energy, that is working to raise the consciousness of the planet
Mhm.
by holding the highest form of love and light and truth. And so really making sure that they'll call me out on getting stuck on labels, because
Ah,
I wanted
yes.
labels. Where are you at? What dimension? What can you do? Tell me
Right.
how this quantum physics work. And they really don't want to like sit there and talk about stuff like that.
Right.
It's not really their energy. They're really about, why are you asking, and what's underneath that we need to look into.
Mhm.
Because their frequency is really, that comes through me, is this, let's get to the core of what we believe or don't believe about ourselves. Like that first stone that's dropped in the middle of, a pond, and the ripples out are the questions I'm asking. I'm asking like, why do I struggle with this? And just give me something like, tell me the answer, right?
Yeah.
And they want to look at the original stone that dropped it in the middle. Let's look at that nugget, because we can go through all the little ripples, or we can go straight to the core of
Yes.
what this is. And
Mhm.
so that's really their perspective, is these high vibrational loving energies, and for us to anchor that, embody that frequency, not try to leave our bodies,
Mhm.
and then to spread it out. So for me, I don't fully leave my body. I know some channelers kind of go and they're in another, sometimes they see themselves with the other beings, in another room, or they see themselves outside of themselves. What they have shown me is kind of like an umbilical cord would be,
Mhm.
in which there's a tube and my energy is going this way and their energy is going this way, and we're blending
Ooh.
in this like beautiful connection. And at first I
Yeah.
wanted to really leave. I was like, oh, take over. Like I can't trust that unless I'm fully out. How can I trust myself, right? And
Yes.
so it was a slow understanding that for me isn't what I'm supposed to do. That at certain times our energy comes in and I fully feel completely like, I don't know what's coming out of my mouth, which is how it works anyways.
Right.
But they are more and more wanting me to be enmeshed with it and holding that energy and seeing myself as connected to that energy rather than it being separate from me.
Mhm.
And so just for my personal makeup, um, of always kind of abdicating over responsibility and power and control to another higher frequency, whether that be your parent, the preacher in the pulpit, the government.
Yeah. Yeah.
This time, we're not going to have you step out. You're going to stand beside us and we're going to work together so that it's all about trusting in yourself. Um, that, hey, you don't need to leave the presentation. You're going to be in it with us, and different points will come in even more.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just will feel their energy, and how it comes through is I get a rotation here, and it's my heart and my throat, and it feels like, how I've described it is, when you're in a hot tub or a pool and there's that jet that comes out, and
Yeah.
if you put your skin against it, it like makes
I can
that
feel it.
feeling on it. That's
Yeah.
how it feels right here on my energy. It feels like there's a
Ooh.
jet stream going in a circle where it feels like it's on my physical body, but I know it's not. And that's how
Mhm.
I know that they're wanting to come in and speak. Um, and yeah, sometimes I'm really like, my head is moving, I'm turning, when I fully let them in, my hands are moving and I'm
Yes.
talking, and just a slightly different dialect, which is interesting.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, that's interesting, Layla. Um, and they said that's just purely for me.
Okay.
It's just purely for you because you needed that difference right
To
now.
know.
Just,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
that's not
difference.
me.
That is
Yeah.
not you. Yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes,
They
yes.
said we don't need to do it. You don't need that. But right now we're okay. You're okay with that. And that's all right. There's no judgment with that. Um, and but they always do have a slightly different sound. So depending on how much or how little I'm letting them in, my voice will change.
Mhm.
Um, and then I've channeled other energies, different light beings and energies that when I've gone into meditation, open up my energy and let them come through, their vibration is completely different.
Yeah.
Much more excitable. I felt like the fifth and sixth, like these other frequencies that said they were from different star races, they are much more, I felt like exciting energy
Yes.
almost. So yeah, for me, it's a really cool experience. And what it feels like is like I'm holding the reins at first of a horse that just wants to go. And that's what
Yeah.
it feels like I'm holding back and they're like, let go. And then as soon as I stop fighting my body and I just open my mouth and just allow that stream to come through, then that's when I'm really in the flow and they're just moving. But the hardest part is trusting and letting
Yeah.
go of those reins. Like once that happens, you're good. But
Right.
until then, that ego mind and that, uh, but afterwards, it's exhilarating. I feel charged. Sometimes I have a hard time going to sleep at night because I've been
Mhm.
filled with this frequency.
Mhm.
And then the people around, usually it's my husband, are like, whoa, this is intense. And,
Yes.
feels all these, like he says, like a menthol blast will come through in which he's like buzzing with energy.
Oh, I
And
love
so,
that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's really how channeling feels for me and how I move their energy through my body.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah.
so fascinated. Thank you for sharing.
Hmm.
Oh, I can relate to so much of what you're just your experience completely. Um, so when I channel and I go really deep, what I call advanced
Yeah.
physical channeling, I do step out and I'm standing at my shoulder because what was happening in my life, I would stop them midstream and ask questions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, Amy, they're here to bring a message through. Just let them talk. So I
Yes.
kind of like went to the side a little bit. But what they show me is when I'm channeling, I get to see the visions. So it's like
Hmm.
watching a movie that's, like being narrated. And so I
Yes.
really enjoy that. And every now and then I still will be like, okay, like in the back of my head, I'm prompting them, okay, now talk about, I have a question. Touch on
Yes.
that subject, in a moment. And it might take a minute, but um to what you're saying, like once you just relax and let it flow through, it goes so smooth. And for myself, it was that regulation because sometimes they speak quickly, sometimes it feels like they're slow. And whatever I'm experiencing behind the scenes, when I come back and watch the recording, I'm like, oh, I
Yes.
thought they were going slow. They actually went really fast. Or,
Yes.
wow, they're actually going at a normal pace. And to me, it felt slow. So it's really funny how the time and yeah, I would say like the time, there's that differentiating experience between when I'm in another dimensional space and then I come back into this reality and see how it came through into this reality. But you just shared so much. I want to ask you, because I just was talking about this, a little aspect of it on the last episode about sharing the body with another
Mm.
spirit. And when it is our team, like these high, high vibrational beings of light, and how sometimes it can be so much for the physical
Mhm.
body. So, did you find that? Like, how has your experience been building up to being able to share your body with them? Because you're saying, especially, like, you don't leave. So
Yeah.
then your body is like all lit up and glowing.
Yeah. So with me, with my experience, I would say I get an exhilaration. I feel supercharged with it. Um, with them sharing my energy. Now I can't now when I did like mediumship, which was really what taught me how to like share my energy, I would really become this person. And I would become
uh,
6 foot tall, and I would walk with a limp, and I could feel the clothes on my body. Like I was very
mhm.
used to feeling energy come in. That could drain me
Yeah.
eventually. Or dealing with people with when I was doing Reiki or any other energy work, I could be very drained by feeling and sensing and allowing their energy within, because I feel like I absorbed it actually unknowingly at first with my guides and the one in many, I'm not necessarily drained by them or needing rest and relaxation. If anything, I really need to ground afterwards. And I
Uh-huh.
feel like they've just like almost dosed me a little by little to where I'm
Yeah.
so used to their energy and frequency. Like I always feel them here and I see them around me almost all the time. So I feel like they're always like here. And
Yeah.
so I feel like almost every day I'll have a time where I'll let them kind of come in and I'll just start talking and let them kind of channel through me. And then I'll be like, okay, thanks. I'll write down what they said and then, go on because I still have that kind of awareness. But yeah, no, I feel really good with the channeling.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, like such a loving experience to have them come through. But coming back into the physical body can feel because it's not, I don't think I'm out, but I must be partially out.
Or maybe
Mm,
expanded a little bit, like to the
yeah,
side, part in,
yes.
part out.
Yes, I would say I am to the side because then when I come fully back in, I'm like, covering my eyes. I'm taking a
Mm-hmm.
moment, trying to ground my energy back and like, oh, okay, here I am. But I'm definitely still like there. And yes, like you said, it's the movies playing, their images that they're showing me to with what they're stating and what's coming out. I'm getting visions of other ways to describe it that's more beneficial. So if I was doing a reading for somebody, after I kind of channel their answer, I'm able to say, this is what I saw and this is how I see that they're
Yes.
explaining it.
Yeah,
because the concepts can be so kind of high. Sometimes it can be kind of confusing, right?
absolutely.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, thank you for all the information you gave me while you were talking, because now I can really explain it in a vision and a thought and solidify it for somebody.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the hallmarks of like that you just know you're channeling because, whoa, I would have never put it in that words. I don't
Oh
even use
yeah.
this words, the grammar,
Mhm.
the dictation, completely different. And then also like they show you things or the messages are deep, multi-layered,
Mhm.
multifaceted. And so it is really nice when we have the understanding of what they meant at the deeper moments of the message that we can then when we come out share that and help ground it in for the listener because
Yes.
it's like you're feeling it, you're seeing it, and you're understanding. And my team will use words that I don't use, and sometimes I've had to look them up in the dictionary. I'm like, is this even a word?
Yes.
like, like wait a minute here.
Yeah.
And a few times when I was channeling, I think it was when I channeled activating the star seed. I looked up something and I was like, that word, does it even make sense in this sentence? And then I would go to the very last
Yes.
definition and I'm like, oh, there we go. Yep, it does. It actually does make
Yes.
sense. So, as a channel like that, those experiences really help me to say, oh, I'm not making this up. It is another being, and to that, the way that I feel them come in, that's how I know they're there.
Yes.
And the Council of Light, when I channel the Council of Light, they typically have one spokesperson, and for a little while there, one of the guys had a very thick accent. And I was like, "Oh, hi, friend!" Like it was kind
Yeah.
of fun because I can't even recreate that. Like, don't even ask me. That's how another way that I
Yes.
know. I'm like, I can't. There's no way I could even try and do that. Like, it's just not happening.
Yes. Yes. I completely get you.
Yeah. So it is enjoyable, it's fun, and I think that it's here to help bring light and information, wisdom and healing to humanity. And for when you were sharing about your husband, that menthol blast, that
Mhm.
is so important to recognize like what is one of the benefits of channeling in such a way versus relay channeling, just sitting here,
Yes.
eyes open, sharing, oh, I'm hearing this, kind of a thing,
Yes.
that passing it on, is that you and the recipient gets an energetic activation or a
Mhm.
clearing, some kind of transmission of the light, which can really reset their whole energetic, flow, activating the chakras, clearing and purging, releasing stuff
Yes.
out of the aura. So I love how you were sharing that, and I'm so happy for you that you have the support of your husband
Ugh.
because that's so important, especially in our line of
Yes.
work where it can be questioned quite often. Um, and then he had that experience. So it's like,
Yeah.
hey, man,
Validating
yeah.
that. And yeah, you're right. It's a frequency exchange that's really happening when you're channeling. It's
Hmm.
not even so much about the words.
Right.
You realize that somebody's receiving a transmission through the frequency that's being stated. And sometimes the words don't sometimes make sense. You're like, why would you say that? Well, it's a frequency that's wanting to come through. And I think that's a validation as well, is that the other person feels this weird shift. They're like, something happened and I don't know what it is,
Hmm.
but it's a frequency exchange. And that's where change happens. It's the experience, not the words. It's the experience that they receive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as you're sharing that, I'm thinking, I'm just thinking back about your path and
Mm,
it very much like, our paths are very parallel, which I find so fascinating. But
mm.
that you were able to begin in certain spaces, you had your own experiences, and then training with different modalities. And all of it really does support channeling because for channeling, we really need to know our energy, what is ours, what is
Mm,
not, how to regulate it, how to communicate with the energy that we'll be working with. And,
yeah.
um, and so all of your experiences prior to that really support it, and it makes sense to me. That's like, okay, girl, you're ready, now we're
Yep.
gonna
Go
start
fly.
channeling. Yeah, there you go. And I too
Yeah.
started with energy healing, and then the automatic writing, it just like
Hmm.
builds upon itself. So are you offering what services are you offering right now for others?
So I offer intuitive Reiki, and then I offer Akashic readings. And I just opened up Akashic readings with Reiki healing. So those sessions are really powerful. When I'm in the Akashic, I'm really allowing them to just channel. And I think that's what surprises people when they have a reading, um, is that I don't know, I preface it, but I don't think people fully understand that when my head's moving and I'm turning, I'm saying things. I'm in your Akashic, but I'm letting the
Yes.
one of many or my guides or their guides kind of channel through and give them the message. And so there's been time in my readings where they're like, "Oh, that was so interesting how you said that." And I'm like, "Oh, I said that. I don't fully remember."
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
don't
"Tell me
remember.
about it. That's interesting."
Yes.
So
Yes.
right now, I was like, they'll say things back I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense because I saw this." Um, I'm
Mhm.
That's how my channeling is coming through my Akashic kind of Reiki healing. And really, I say Reiki, but my collective is coming through and helping with energy healing
Mhm.
as well. So it's not, I mean, Reiki healing is amazing, but you're also getting based off of what you need and what you're ready for,
Yeah.
and what we're clearing. You're getting other vibrations of energy healing coming through. But that's how I'm offering channeling. I am, though, just like everything else, I feel myself peeling back the layers of comfort and uh, to move further and just to saying, I'm just going to do a channeling session for you and opening up because it's really what
Yeah.
I'm doing. I'm
Yeah.
just doing it through a different medium to allow myself the comfort of channeling, but telling you something that you can understand a little easier. So
Right.
that's really what's happening. So I'm hoping to be moving forward with just like channeling
Yeah.
with my other services.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it's a gentle unfolding, you could say. Don't even worry about labels or pushing or forcing. But one
Yes.
day you're going to be like, okay, let me just put that up on my website.
Yes. And let it
Here we
go.
go. And
Right.
voila. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I love it so much.
Mhm.
Well, where can our guests find you if they would like to set up a session with you?
So I am on Instagram at layla.l.taylor. And that's Laila. Everyone wants to spell my name with a Y. And then I'm at laylaltaylor.com on my website is the two main platforms that I utilize to get information out and for people to book sessions.
Okay, lovely. And I'll include your links in the show notes.
If I could leave with saying anything to
Hmm.
anyone who feels like they're struggling with, anxiety or depression, and they're doing all the things that they can do for themselves medically, to really take a chance if you're feeling called and drawn to, search for energy medicine or having a Reiki session or, having an Akashic reading with whoever you feel drawn to know that, you 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 don't have to be consumed with your pain the rest of your life, that there's a time and a place for it, and that there are other people who have gone through what you've gone through, and there's help and assistance out there for you. That's the main thing I want to get through, is that it's such a lonely feeling, and I want to be
Mm-hmm.
there for people who have those emotions and then also feel drawn to this other side, this spirituality and energy medicine, that, if it's calling to you, there's a reason that you're getting called to it, and to find somebody that you feel comfortable with and to continue what you're doing if it feels right, and to try to add in some other practices if you feel drawn to it as well.
Yeah, that's so important. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me too. This has been wonderful.
Oh, it has been such a joy. Thank you
Mm.
so much for being with us today on the Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast. It's a gift, and I'm looking forward to connecting again in the future.